stop. Before you scroll past this, before you click on something else, before you tell yourself you'll come back to it later, I need you to understand something. The monitor sitting in front of me right now has just made every single expensive OLED display look absolutely ridiculous. Not because this is better than them, but because this does 90% of what they do, delivers the same OLED magic that gamers have been obsessing over for years, and costs less than half the price of what we were recommending just 12 months ago. This is not a drill. OLED gaming monitors are finally, genuinely, actually affordable. And if you have been waiting for this moment, your wait is over. Let's get into it. For years, OLED monitors have sat behind a glass wall that most people simply could not walk through. You would read the reviews, watch the videos, hear about the contrast, the response times, the colors, and then you would check the price and immediately close the tab, because the price was never for regular people. It was for enthusiasts with disposable income who genuinely did not care what things cost as long as they were getting the absolute best. And that is fine. Those people exist, those monitors exist for them, and they are incredible. But the rest of us, the people gaming on a budget, the people who want great performance without spending a fortune, the people who have been sitting on a perfectly decent LCD for 3 years telling themselves it is probably fine, those people have been completely left out of the OLED conversation. Until right now. Because what has landed here is a QD OLED gaming monitor at a price point that is genuinely jaw-dropping when you look at the specification sheet. We are talking 1440p resolution, a full 240 Hz refresh rate, proper OLED panel technology from a brand you have actually heard of, not some mystery manufacturer shipping containers of panels nobody has ever tested, and a price that sits in the territory most people would have previously associated with a decent IPS or VA display. This should not be possible. 6 months ago, I would have told you it was not possible. And yet here we are. Now, the very first thing your brain does when you see a price like this attached to a spec like this is immediately start looking for the catch. Because there is always a catch. Budget monitors always have something hiding underneath the surface that explains the price. Whether that is terrible build quality, awful software, a panel that looks great in marketing photos and mediocre in real life, or some fundamental technical compromise that makes the whole thing feel like a waste of money once you actually live with it. So let me be upfront about exactly where this monitor saves money, because it does, and you deserve to know going in. The stand is the most obvious place. It is plastic, it is functional, it adjusts and tilts and even rotates to portrait mode, but it does not feel premium. There's a slight wobble that the more expensive competition does not have. There is no quick release mechanism. If that genuinely bothers you, spend a small amount on a monitor arm and never think about it again, because the stand is genuinely the only physical compromise here that you will actually notice in daily use. Beyond that, the port selection is straightforward and practical. A couple of HDMI connections for your consoles, a display port for your PC, a headphone jack for emergencies. There is no USB hub, no next generation connectivity, no fancy extras, just the connections you actually need, cleanly laid out and easy to use. For the price, that is the right call. But then you plug it in, and everything changes. Because the moment this panel lights up, every single concern about the price and the plastic stand and the basic port selection just evaporates completely. That is the power of OLED, and it gets me every single time. The blacks are not dark, they are not very dark, they are nothing. Absolute zero. The pixels that are supposed to be off are simply off. No backlight bleeding through, no slight gray glow at the edges, no compromised local dimming, trying and failing to control the light behind an LCD panel. Just pure, perfect darkness, exactly where the image calls for it. And then right next to that darkness, you have colors that are vivid and saturated and alive in a way that nothing with a conventional backlight can match. The contrast between those two things, the absolute black and the vivid color, is what makes OLED look the way it does. It is not a subtle difference from a good IPS panel. It is not a marginal upgrade. It is a completely different category of visual experience. And at this price point, experiencing it for the first time is genuinely shocking. The resolution sits in the perfect position for gaming right now, sharp enough to give you a genuinely clean and detailed image, not so demanding that you need an obscenely powerful system to push respectable frame rates. This is the sweet spot that the vast majority of gamers should be targeting, and on this panel, it looks absolutely fantastic. Text is crisp, fine detail in games, reads clearly, and there is just an overall quality to the image that makes everything you look at feel better than it did before. Now, let us talk about the thing that makes OLED genuinely special for gaming specifically. Because this is where the technology gap between this and a conventional LCD is at its most dramatic. The response time on this panel is so fast, it is essentially a non-issue. We are not talking about the kind of response time that LCD manufacturers advertise that requires aggressive overdrive settings and still produces trailing artifacts if you push it too hard. we are talking about a natural inherent speed that comes from the fundamental physics of how OLED pixels work. They switch fast because that is what they do. No tricks, no processing, no aggressive overdrive required. Just clean, fast, natural pixel response that makes motion look the way motion is supposed to look. At the full 200 Hz refresh rate, gaming on this monitor is a revelation if you're coming from anything less capable. Fast camera movement is sharp and controlled. Tracking targets feels precise. Reacting to things happening on screen feels immediate in a way that genuinely makes you better at games. Not because the monitor is doing anything clever, but because it is finally getting out of your way and letting you see exactly what is happening without blur or smearing or lag softening the image. Playing a fast, competitive shooter on this display is one of those experiences where you finish a session and genuinely wonder how you were managing before. The combination of OLED response time and 240 Hz refresh rate is just devastating in the best possible way. Adaptive Sync covers a healthy range of frame rates from the bottom of what you would want to game at, all the way up to the panel maximum, which means whether you are running an older system or a brand new powerhouse, you should be able to keep your frame rate in the smooth zone without much trouble. If you are on an NVIDIA card, G-Sync compatibility may need a quick manual override through your display settings. It takes less than a minute and works perfectly once done. Hopefully official certification follows soon, but even without it, Adaptive Sync performs exactly as you would want. Now here is the honest part, because a review that does not tell you where something falls short is just an advert. And this monitor does have a ceiling that you need to know about before you spend your money. That ceiling is brightness. In a well-controlled room with managed lighting, this panel is genuinely comfortable and looks excellent. It is the kind of brightness that most people actually use their monitors at when everything is set up sensibly. But if your setup involves a lot of natural light, if you work next to a window, if you cannot control your ambient environment particularly well, you are going to find this panel struggling to cut through. The QD OLED surface coating has a glossy quality that is gorgeous in controlled light because it enhances contrast and makes colors pop even more. But in bright environments, it picks up reflections. And when you combine that with a panel that is not at the top of the brightness chart, the image can feel overwhelmed. This is fixable with a simple tilt of the monitor in most situations, but in really bright spaces, it is a genuine limitation worth being aware of. HDR performance follows the same pattern. The structural quality of HDR on this panel is actually very good. Because every pixel is its own light source, you get none of the haloing or brightness bleed that ruins HDR on budget LCD displays, where the local dimming zones are too large and too imprecise. Dark areas stay dark precisely. Bright elements are rendered cleanly. The underlying HDR handling is solid. But the peak brightness ceiling means those moments where HDR is supposed to absolutely knock your socks off, the blinding sunlight through a window, the explosion that should feel like it is coming off the screen, they are present but restrained. There are multiple HDR modes in the menu, and the movie mode in particular gives you a more dynamic and punchy presentation that is genuinely worth using. But calibrate your expectations. This is HDR that works and looks good rather than HDR that leaves you speechless. The automatic brightness management that all OLED panels use behaves well here, actually better than on many brighter panels because the adjustments are more subtle and less distracting. In everyday SDR use, you will almost certainly never notice it. In HDR, it is visible but measured. It is one of those things that sounds worse in a review than it feels in real life. Here's the bottom line. This monitor is outstanding. For gaming, it delivers exactly what OLED promises. Incredible contrast, natural motion clarity, fast response, vivid color, at a price that has never been available before for this level of panel technology. The compromises are real, but they are honest. They are priced correctly. They are the kind of thing that most people gaming in a typical setup will simply never be bothered by. If brightness is critical to you because of your environment, know that going in. If HDR spectacle is the main thing you're chasing, there are panels that go further for more money. But if you want the best overall gaming monitor experience at a price that does not require you to make difficult life choices, this is it. This is the monitor the OLED market has needed for years. Check current pricing through the links below, and if the number looks right, do not hesitate. This is the real deal. And I want to take a second here to zoom out because I think there is something genuinely significant happening in the monitor market right now that goes beyond just this one display. For the longest time, the premium gaming monitor space has felt deliberately gated. Like the manufacturers knew exactly how good OLED was, knew that people wanted it, and were quite content to keep the price high because the enthusiast market would pay it regardless. The idea that a genuinely great OLED gaming experience would be accessible to someone on a normal budget felt like wishful thinking. Something that would happen eventually, maybe in a few years, when the technology matured and the production costs dropped enough. And now that moment has actually arrived, it almost feels surreal. Because this is not a stripped back OLED experience. This is not a panel that technically qualifies as OLED, but delivers a compromised version of what the technology can do just to hit a price point. This is a real, full-fat QD OLED gaming monitor with a proper high refresh rate, proper resolution, and all the contrast and color performance that makes OLED worth caring about in the first place. The only things missing are the premium build extras and the ultra-high brightness that you pay serious money for on the top-end panels. Everything that matters for gaming is completely present and completely excellent. That is a remarkable achievement, and it deserves to be recognized as such. So yes, the market has finally delivered what gamers have been asking for. OLED is no longer just for people with unlimited budgets. It is here, it is real, and it is absolutely worth your attention. Smash that like button, get subscribed for more, and I will catch you in the next